to the city. We'll listen in to that briefing.
That is the standard practice world over, and we will not be distracted from the task at hand by such misinformed and misguided statements. We are indebted to the teams that have spent more than 48 hours on the ground, giving their blood, sweat and minds to the success of this operation. Their skills and expertise have assisted us immensely in the city to the point where we are now. I can indicate to you as the media, the news that just came in now is that they've also detected and identified the old Johannesburg gas line, and that has been discovered to still be active, and the work will commence to close and isolate that. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you, City Manager. We will open the floor for colleagues who may wish to pose questions to the City Manager and the panel that supports the City Manager from the various parties. I've got Alex, I've got Heidi, I've got one hand, I've got Bali, SATC at the end. Maybe if we can take that line and then you will come for a second.
Thank you so much. I have two questions for the city. The first is, you just mentioned the gas line, an old Joburg gas line. Can you give us more details? Is that leaking gas? Has it been building up? Is that the cause of the explosion? And then to the city, there's been some comments by councillors about the Premier's interference or speaking for the city. Can you comment on that, please? Thank you.
It's Heidi Jacos from the NCA. That was going to be my question. So you speak about this old gas line that has been detected. Can we have context? What does that mean? Is that a risk? Is that what does that mean? And then it's 48 hours later. What has caused this explosion? Are we any closer to knowing? Yesterday we were told about manholes and Telkom, and everyone's still confused about what that even means. So can we just have clarity? Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Merricks from Kasi Broadcasting Africa. I hear the report on the gas line and so on, but we are in Joburg. We know there's Nyaupe boys in the area. We know there's people underground in those manholes. Has there been anyone going to look at whether that was a human error or whether it was a deliberate sabotage? Because we're not going to debate with anybody. There's young boys underground staying there, whether you call them hobos, whether you call them terrorists, they are there. Has anybody went to go and look at that risk factor? Thank you.
For SABC News. My question is pertaining to the buildings and the integrity of the buildings. We understand that there is a report, and there are reports suggesting that the buildings can still be habitable, however, rather occupied. However, my colleague who was in the city has seen that the holes and the sinkholes are actually getting wider and bigger, and is worried that this could compromise the integrity of the surrounding buildings. Can you speak to this or give certainty that the buildings in the area are indeed safe for people to live in?
Thanks, colleagues. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I will request Johan to indicate and to provide detail specifically with the associated risk with regard to the line that we've just detected. Indeed, it's 48 hours later. We are getting closer to establishing what it is, and the team will explain to you the number of gas lines that we have in the area and the work that has been done, as well as the detection that we've got. So that results we will provide to you now. With regard to the underground and the infrastructure, indeed what we've done, and we've indicated this yesterday, we are using technologies and drones that we've managed to fly into those particular areas. There are still areas that we cannot access due to the level of rubble and the rubble that we still need to remove. And with your permission, we will probably then even present to you and show you what it is that we found and how we could see some structural damages within that particular area. In terms of the buildings and its integrity, we can indicate to you, we've done a test, we've sent through teams to double check and to check in terms of leak, gas leak detections and so forth. We now have the building controls officer, environmental health, and a multidisciplinary team that is going into each and every building, floor per floor. And the indication that we received on that area where it seems that it's wider, it's only where the rubble is now starting to break and where it's starting to move. That's the level that we are having now. So I will give over to Johan just to touch on the technicalities with regard to that. Johan?
Yes, thank you. I can confirm that. I think if we start with the new line that was discovered, we are aware of the old line, and most of the areas the old line is inactive. The Igoli lines have been isolated, and there's numerous valves that are excavated to make sure it's all isolated. And they even cut the main line in some space, and we tested it is zero gas there, so it's absolutely sure there's no zero gas. But we still detected gas sort of midway into the explosion, and that's why we investigate and open some of the rubble, and then discovered the smaller line, old Johannesburg gas line, is a steel line, and that is active and flowing methane gas. So we are not sure if it is connected somewhere to the Igoli line as part of a distribution line from one of the tenants or one of their clients. But they will actually isolate that as well. Then it will be safe. So most of the areas, the gas levels have been depleted, and we are almost ready then to start with the remedial work and for electricity to activate the services as well. So this is a bit of a surprise that nobody knew about, and that's why we keep on searching and testing. We have also appointed Envirotech that will measure the whole of next week, and we have now also extended the scope. Tomorrow we will actually the extended cavities or the main ring around Joburg going up to the old Santonville after what's it called, the central buildings will be tested. There's 9 additional manholes that we just make sure all those trenches and cavities are basically free of gas. So that will be done with electricity tomorrow, that we just mitigate any future event as well while we're busy testing it now. But I will be testing the whole of next week from environmental air quality perspective as well as gas presence. When we look at a question of the cracks, the buildings itself are basically all piled and the foundations are deep down. They're totally unaffected by the explosion in the center of the road. So what we see, the cracks that opening, to explain to you, and these cavities underneath that was built, the tunnels, are about 4 meters deep and about 3 to 4 meters wide. It differ from the top to the bottom. So you have the side walls, and because of the explosion, some of the side walls are collapsing and some of it are falling in. So you will see the cracks open. We'd actually recommend you not to go there, because I've seen some of the cracks open since yesterday. There's one region that a side wall will collapse and just fall into that cavity and fill it up. So there's no danger to the building. It's 50 meters away from the building, the crack that is showing movement. But if you go close to there with heavy vehicles or stand on a side, you may actually slide in with it. So it is a dangerous zone, and stay away from it. I've seen a lot of your media people, unfortunately, in the area. And it's not wise to be there. It is risky at this stage still. Then I think the last thing that we have addressed is the stability. So the rest of the buildings are basically safe. So there's nothing that show any indications that the buildings were damaged or their foundations were damaged by this explosion in the center of the street. The only place that we saw little damage was in a corner of Joburg Street, where there was a channel going to the side. It actually blew up the traffic light, and you can see the canopy have a vertical blow, and that is part of the release of the explosion that actually showed that it blew out there. That's the only other evidence we have seen. And then on the footage that this gentleman here will show us now, we also see further damage, which it didn't collapse, but it actually cracked some of the slabs, and that's why there's more of the road barricaded. That's what I'm showing you there. So the technology support us to actually investigate upstream and downstream. The upstream side, because of the high moisture content, they will do the investigation. Is the temperature delta between yesterday and today actually fogged the lenses, as you guys would know who have cameras. So we just have to ventilate it properly, and then they will be able to do that investigation as well. To the question of the Nyapas or Nyapos, Nyape, whatever it's called, I think this footage is actually visual evidence for us that there's nobody living down there. And the downside is a lot of water there. There is no baggage, no people, no evidence of food, no evidence of any people working down there. So we can exclude that in totality from this risk. They were not part of this. So the ignition was accidental. And then the cause, I think somebody perhaps haven't been at our brief last night, the cause is a gas explosion. It was gas that leaked. The source of the gas is what we try to determine. Whether it's an old gas line, whether it is from the tenant side or the client side that the Ecoli has leaked in there. And I brought in my specialist today, Dr. Antonio, as well, that we do explosion simulation to see what the magnitude and the size would be, that we can try and determine what's the volume that was exposed and determine what other sources we must search for. So we're busy with that. So we are not conclusively know where it came from. What it is, we are quite sure what caused that. It's 450 meters, about 7 meters wide, 169,000 tons roundabout of material that was lifted, and if you calculate that in megatons, we calculate it in tons of dynamite, so I can tell you it's a lot. We'll be able to give you figures in about 3 or 4 days' time once we have done the calculations. It's a big explosion. So it is not a 5-liter gas by a Zama or something like that. If you think that is what exploded, that won't do that.
And the terrorists?
There's no terrorist activity. From the footage we have seen, the traces that you've seen for bisons, I also worked in arms corps for 5 years, so I know the traces of explosions. All types, plastics, as well as industrial explosions. We haven't seen any of those traces. So there's no evidence of that at all. We mustn't even discuss it. This is a pure gas explosion.
No, thank you very much. I think it's quite clear from our side, technically and otherwise, it's definitely a gas explosion. Which line it is, we are now detecting that, and we are assessing that particular part. We are ruling out at this point anything related to Zama, so anything illegal mining and so forth. So that for now it's out. The last point I wanted to raise is that we will be fencing off the area, and that should be starting by tomorrow, and we will be providing feedback as we are moving, because indeed it's a disaster site, but it will be becoming a construction site very soon. The dependency remains. Once we can get the site to be safe, we can then be able to ensure that we then deploy our resources in, whether it's from the side of our entities and so forth, and we will be taking full charge of these particular processes through our entities, and then work around the clock with our teams to ensure that we get this place up and running. It will take a few weeks and a few months, but the teams are in place.
Thank you very much, Sia. I don't know if there's any follow-up. Maybe one. Okay, I see Alex and then Bali, and then Koba, and then we'll close it off.
Thank you. Just my second question was about the Premier.
That's fine, I'll take that one as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think before Bali comes in, the question about the Premier, we'll leave it to the political principals in the city. I think this is more a technical briefing, and it is focused directly on what is happening on the ground and the response as it pertains to the technical issues. Bali?
My question was also going to be political. I was going to add to Alex's question.
Yeah, I'll deal with the political one later. Goba?
Yeah, Teresa Goba from Agri-Business. I just want to get clarity. There was some, I think the police commissioner released a statement about some missing child. I just want to get clarity. Has everyone been found? Are there any searches that are happening? Was there any missing child? Or anything like that?
My name is Fana. I'm from EMS. In regard to that, we are also working hand in hand with the footage that you just saw to try and search for the kid. Yes, there was a information that was given that there was a missing child, but we are doing all in our powers to try and search for the child, and working hand in hand with the SAPS to try and have more information from the siblings to say that is the child missing or just getting more information. But we are working with the team to try and get the footage, because for now it's not safe to send any of our technician underground because of the integrity of the structure.
Like we've said yesterday, any form of search and rescue can really only start as and when we can do rubble removal. But before we can do any form of rubble removal, we need to declare the area safe through our technical teams. So that work can only start. And also last night we've mentioned, and it remains the same, we will not be able to send in any heavy machinery. So whatever we will be doing, that removal of rubble will be done by hand.
No problem. Just one last question, and I'm going to ask colleagues that if there's any very important question that you'll die without leaving us having asked, let's do it quickly, because as you see, the entire team that's here still needs to go back to site. They've been there for the last 48 hours, and they must still push further to make the site safe for any restoration of services. Heidi, then.
I just want to ask, I think it's a fair question. There's no possibility, or you'll tell us, of any secondary explosion. Not only just in that area, but all around it. Thanks.
Yes, my name is Shannon from Kasi Broadcasting Africa. Based on your report, it sounds like you can't confirm or you don't want to deny that there's still people underground, because you don't know. You can't find the missing child. So at this stage, you can't say for sure whether there's 1 or 2 or 10 Nyaupe boys that were stealing steel underground and they died during the explosion. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so let me take that particular question. We are trying to provide you with some level of comfort, but it does seem that when we respond to you, you keep on making certain allegations, and we would want to say to you, at this point, we cannot confirm some of the issues that you are now making. We are saying to you, we are using technology. We've deployed the best of technology to go into these particular areas. We are saying to you, it's a disaster site, and some of this rubble must be removed. But also technically, we are saying to you, it is really clear to us that people cannot live there when we look at the footage that we do have. Next time we can make time and really go through the footage, and once you start seeing us moving through the tunnels, you would see that there's water and so forth, and there's no sign of life per se and so forth. The last one I will give that the one of the possibility of a secondary explosion through to the technical team as well.
Before Johan comes in, I think let's take that last question by Bali, so that by the time Johan comes in, we then close it. Bali.
Okay, Valentin Tetwa, SABC News. This is pertaining to the last report that was issued by the Provincial Police Commissioner, saying that no one has come forward and opened a missing case person. Has someone come forward now? Are you sure and certain that there are people who are missing, and have you been in contact with the nearby police stations to see if there are any missing persons reports?
Thank you. I think let's maybe allow Johan, and then CM, you can close it off after.
Okay.
Yeah, the risk for a secondary explosion, that is the reason that we are testing the total tunnel structure, the major tunnel structure for gas. We have tested the kilometer upstream, we have tested the sidelines, we have tested 600 meters downstream, and there's no gas present at this stage. What we find there is a bit of rotten water, so it's a bit of sulfur smell. So we detect every type of gas that there is, but it's not something that will explode. And it's not at the levels of explosion. So we have there what we call lower level of explosion, LEL, is just bus names. So nothing is close to LEL, and there's no methane there. But we are going to test to the mainstream, that is to the city center and to the distribution center as well. And it's a ring main running around the center of town that is kilometers long. So that will happen tomorrow. It's like 14 manholes over about 4 or 5 kilometers distance. And it is just to be sure. and to be prevented if we're doing that.
From our side, we can confirm with regard to the missing child, it's only information that we got, but there's no case number or anything at this stage. But we would want to really request you and our residents to remain patient with us. We will be providing this feedback quite often, and we are committed to this process, and our teams will continue to work around the clock in order for us to be able to provide the feedback and also to make a difference. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, CM, and thanks to the colleagues. I think, as the CM has said, the commitment is that we'll do these updates regularly. It might not be as regularly as tomorrow again, but perhaps Sunday or Monday morning once we have made some considerable progress in the work that's been done. Thanks a lot, colleagues. Thanks, CM.
And the video, are they fine to say?
No, I think we're fine with it. It was really just to show you, colleagues, that we've already got footage of going underground, what is happening. As you could have seen, some of the wiring has fallen off from the brackets from the explosions. We're also able to pick up some underground cracks, and that's why we're closing some of the intersections, because we can pick up that there are cracks underground, and those intersections possibly could be compromised in terms of their integrity. So yeah, that's work that's ongoing, and will continue to go on until we're able to finalize and make sure that the entire space is safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Now that is the city manager and his technical team speaking about the developments in the investigation with regards to the explosion that took place on Wednesday in Johannesburg. That's Floyd Brink and his team saying that they have a multidisciplinary team to investigate the cause. You heard that there is no foul play expected, or rather suspected, whether it's zamazamas or any form of terrorism. This was just an accident that happened due to the gas explosion. The city also says some lines have been isolated to ensure that there is no gas that could implode or explode, and extended cavities will be tested to ensure that they are free of gas, including the buildings. They say that the piled up buildings rather are not affected by the cracks in the Lillian Ngoyi Road or street, otherwise known as Bree Street, and that the city has issued a warning for communities to please stay clear of the area as it is still unsafe.